Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Torah Lechaim with me. I'm Rabbi Anibal. I'm the spiritual leader of Congregation Shaare Zedek, located in the beautiful prairies of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. It's 10:05 p.m. Central Time, and I would like to see who is with me today. So a reminder, the chat is open. Priscilla is here, Priscilla Kerr. Welcome, Priscilla. Chat is open on Facebook and YouTube. So if you type your messages, I will be able to read it on my screen so we can feel connected. It's always great. It's always great. Just give me 1 second. There. I have a speaker with the sound coming to me. I don't want any problems with feedback. Judy Chirac is here. Good afternoon. Great to know that you two are here. Let's see. I always give a few minutes at the beginning. I want to be sure everybody's on time to the class. It's it's important. I don't want to have to repeat myself too much. I don't care repeating myself a little bit to accommodate students that come a little later, but if we can wait a little longer to be sure more people are joining the class, that is going to be great. Today we are going to study about Parshat Vayigash. Vayigash. We are studying the book of Genesis, and this is more about the story with Joseph. Now Joseph is number 2 in Egypt. Let's put it this way, number 2. It was Pharaoh and then Joseph. Poor Joseph, the one who was sold by his brothers. And his brothers came to Egypt. They didn't recognize him, but he recognized them. And it was a very interesting story, almost like a novel. Well, I guess it's not a coincidence that the story was made a musical by Andrew Lloyd Webber. Beautiful musical, wonderful music. By the way, if you never experienced that musical, Joseph, I recommended it. It's pretty good. Including the Pharaoh, who sings like Elvis Presley. If you remember, has to be a rich baritone voice to play the Pharaoh. Joseph, more like a tenor. Higher voice, but again, difficult to sing. It's a beautiful music by Andrew Lloyd Webber. Yeah. Well, I see that more people are joining the class. Please say hello in the chat. I want to know who you are. If you can't use the chat, that's fine. That's okay. But if you use the chat even during the class, it gets more interactive. So I know what you think. I love to know the opinions of my students, so we can interact, we can have a dialogue. This is new technologies. I know for many of you it took a little bit to get used to it, but by now we can all appreciate the magic of technology and the openness. I know sometimes classes are on Zoom. The problem with Zoom is too restrictive. If nobody gives you the link, you can't join. And with these things that we go live on YouTube and Facebook and they're totally open, many people sometimes they just find it. They're browsing their Facebook pages or the YouTube portals and they just find the class and they join. We like to be as welcoming as possible and as less restrictive as possible. CJR is here. Hello. Welcome to the class. Okay, let's start with Parshat Vayigash. Let's see what happened with Joseph and his brothers right now. Now, this is the Parsha where Joseph is going to reveal himself to his brothers. Finally. We were expecting this moment. So when is it going to happen? What is happening today? So far, up to this point, a little bit of a context, what's happening is that, remember, Joseph recognized his brothers didn't recognize Joseph, but Joseph kind of played tricks with them and created a plot to accuse Benjamin to be a robber. And why will he do that? He already knows by experience all the suffering that he had to go through because he was accused of something that he didn't do. So why will he do the same now with his brother? Is it some kind of like an evil revenge or what? Well, the rabbi said no, all the opposite. In fact, now Joseph is creating a whole situation, a whole plot, just to test his brothers. He wanted to know if his brothers change. In the past, they were jealous of him, so they sold him as a slave. He wasn't in touch with his family anymore, but he probably took an educated guess that with him out of the picture, the new favorite son will be Benjamin. Why? Because only Benjamin and Joseph were the children of Rachel, who was the beloved wife of Jacob. Jacob had two wives, Rachel and Leah, but the Torah is very clear. It says that Rachel preferred or loved Rachel more than Leah. So the children of Rachel, somehow they were his favorite as well. The other brothers resented that over Joseph, and they ended up selling him as a slave. Now with Joseph out of the picture again, Joseph guessed that the new favorite will be Benjamin. Perhaps the brothers were plotting now to get rid of Benjamin. So Joseph actually gave them an excuse to do just that, to get rid of Benjamin. He said, look, Joseph accused Benjamin of being a robber. Said Benjamin is going to be thrown into Egyptian jail. But no, all of you guys, you can go back to your land. You're absolutely innocent. I'm not saying anything about you. So you go back. Just leave this little guy, Benjamin, here. He will go to jail. He will pay for his crime. But you are free to go. If you really wanted to get rid of Benjamin, if you were one of Joseph's brothers, you would say, this is from heaven. We can go back home, tell our father what Benjamin did, and that's it. No more Benjamin to steal the attention from our father. Okay? CJ Ruvain. Okay. That's the initial CJR. Great. So, but going back to Joseph, Benjamin, and the other brothers, that's not at all what happened right there. Joseph discovered, actually to his surprise, that his brothers did change. This time, they were able to give up their lives to protect Benjamin. Especially, he was shocked by the attitude of Judah, one of his brothers. Judah was the one who took the initiative and tried to advocate for his brother Benjamin, and he endangering his life or his physical being in order to do that. And that is the beginning of the parsha. This is Judah taking the initiative, trying to convince Joseph, actually, viceroy of Egypt, trying to convince Joseph, but remember they didn't recognize Joseph, trying to convince Joseph that Benjamin is innocent. Very risky. Back in the day, it wouldn't be good advice to tell the leader of a different nation that he or she were wrong. You have to have lots of courage to do that. But let's see the way the Parsha presents the facts of what happened back in those days. So, the Parsha begins with these words. Vayigash elav Yehuda vayomer bi Adoni idaver na avdecha davar veoznei Adoni ve'al ichad apecha ve'avdecha ki chamocha kefaro. Then Judah approached him. Who is him? Joseph. But you see, it says him because they didn't recognize him. So it wasn't Joseph. It was him. It was the viceroy of Egypt. So again, then Judah approached him and said, please, my Lord, let now your servant speak something into my Lord's ears, and let not your wrath be kindled against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh. Very interesting way that Judah approached the viceroy of Egypt. I would like to see what you think about this situation. Will you act the same way? What would you do if you were in Judah's shoes or sandals back in the day? What would you do if you weren't Judas sandals? Would like to know. Now, Rashi is the first one that I want to quote for you. I want to show you what he thinks about this whole episode. And Rashi finds something quite strange, and we are going to see in a minute why was that strange. Rashi tried to explain the words "into my Lord's ears." What does it mean, into my Lord's ears? Gonna whisper something into his ears? What is it? Because that didn't really make much sense to say that the viceroy of Egypt will allow such close distance with a foreigner, that was Judah, right? With a foreigner, in order for this foreigner to say something close to the viceroy's ear. Doesn't make any sense. So Rashi sees a red flag here, and he's trying to explain the expression Beoznei Adoni, into my Lord's ear. And Rashi says that the meaning of that is, may my words penetrate into your ears. Now, this is something. Hi, Peter. Hi, Peter. What do you say? Let's see. You have a comment. You said, act the same to keep Benjamin safe, as Jacob will die if Benjamin didn't return. Yeah. So, but nevertheless, yeah. But you see, that's interesting what you said. Act the same. You will do the same thing. But why will you do it? Will you do it because it's the right thing to do, or because you want to prevent Jacob's death? That's another thing that sometimes keep me thinking. If the brothers really change, or they didn't want to carry the guilt of, quote unquote, killing their father because the little brat Benjamin didn't come back. We don't know, because unfortunately the Torah doesn't give us many details of how was the relationship between Jacob, Benjamin, and the other brothers once Joseph was out of the picture. We can only guess that Benjamin was the one who became the closest to his father. And it seems to be the case with the fact, because one of the arguments that Judah and the brothers said, hey, if the little one doesn't come home, our father is going to die. That means that it was something special about Benjamin, because they didn't say anything about the other brothers. Remember, the first time they came to Egypt, Shimon another brother stayed in jail, and they had no problem going back. It's like Jacob wouldn't say anything about that one of the brothers was missing. But now there was Benjamin, there was a problem. It was a problem, and they somehow protected the brother's life. So keep that in mind. But again, thank you so much, Peter, for sharing your opinion. Okay, so let's go back to this. Made my words penetrate into your ears. So in other words, what Rashi is saying here is basically it's an idiom. It's an idiom of saying, pay attention to what I have to say. Because we all know when we talk to each other, or when we talk to somebody else, sometimes we can talk, or somebody can be talking to us, and the words may have, sometimes they have no effect, because we are not really paying attention. We don't. We are already thinking what we are going to have for dinner, or we are thinking that a bill it has to be paid tomorrow, or who knows, so many things that going through our heads all the time, that we are talking to people, but we are not really listening to what they have to say. And it's very common that you are talking to somebody and the person actually notices that you are not really paying attention, and he will stop the conversation and say, hey, listen what I'm telling you. Listen what I'm about to say. Why is that necessary if we are already talking? Well, it's an idiom. I know you're listening, but really listen what I'm telling you. Or in other words, pay attention what I'm saying. This is serious. So Rashi says that this expression, into my Lord's ear, is an idiom as to saying, please pay attention, because what I'm saying is very important. It's a life and death situation. So this is one beautiful explanation from Rashi. And again, Rashi is always looking for those kind of words that make no sense, as it wouldn't make sense to imply that the viceroy of Egypt will allow a foreigner like Judah came too close to him. But there are other things, and you are going to see in the next couple of texts that seems to imply that this close proximity to say something into the person's ear physically didn't make any sense. Let's keep reading and you will see what I'm talking about here. Another interpretation. This is by Dr. Victor Bonchak. He says, the wrong interpretation is based on a misunderstanding, namely that Judah speaking Beoznei Adoni, Yedaver Nabi Oznei Adoni, will enter Joseph's ear. So we are misled both because of the words, may your servant speak, and in my Lord's ear. And by the fact that Judah did step nearer to Joseph. Why else would he step near if not to speak individually with him? But this is a wrong conclusion, for the Torah states that there was an interpreter between them. You see, we already, I love this. This is detective work. Sometimes the rabbis do detective work. How is it possible that the Torah is implying that Judah is coming closer to the viceroy to talk into his ear, like it's almost like whispering something into his ear, if up to this point the Torah mentioned that they had an interpreter? Judah and his brothers, they didn't know that the person in front of them was Joseph, and he could actually understand Hebrew or Aramaic or whatever, probably Aramaic back in the day, right? He could understand the language. It was probably a funny situation at some point. It happens to me all the time. When I'm here in Canada, my first language is Spanish. So many people don't know. People don't know me. They don't know that I speak Spanish. So they will be speaking in Spanish in front of me because they think that nobody's understanding what they are saying, but I can understand every word. Sometimes I try to, I bite my tongue so I won't laugh. So I can listen to all those words of people thinking that nobody's understanding what they are saying. So this is pretty much the same. Joseph was there listening to his brothers arguing and trying to come up with the strategy, but he understood every word. But so now to imply that Judah said, oh, no, let me go close to you and I will say something into your ear without an interpreter, didn't make any sense. Judah didn't speak Egyptian. That's why they needed the interpreter. Otherwise, if there was one brother who spoke Egyptian, they didn't need the interpreter. He could act as an interpreter. Okay, so this is the first thing that we learn here. We have to be careful when we try to understand the words, okay? Because there was a language barrier there. Let's keep going. So, to disabuse us of the idea, Rashi adds the words penetrate into your ears. In doing this, Rashi is telling that Judah is pleading that his words, not his speaking, his words will enter Joseph's ear. This is most reasonable interpreted to mean that he hopes Joseph will accept what he has to say. Again, he said, hey, please listen to me. Pay attention to what I have to say. Pay attention. This is important. Just a little remark, okay? A little remark to be extra careful or extra sure that the viceroy is actually paying attention and listening to every word that they have to say. I have to imagine that it was very complicated in those days to use the interpreter. There is always, I don't know about you, but there is always something missing when you use an interpreter. There are many idioms and many things that sometimes you don't really say, but they're related to your body language and the combination of words you use that sometimes the interpreter does not catch. and then when the interpreter just translates the words, then something about the message is missing, no pun intended, in translation. It's missing in translation. So, but they have to deal with that. That was the only thing they had. Okay, so any comments? I see the last one making a comment was Peter, and that was great. And I would like to know if you guys have any other comment about this. Okay, so let's continue then. Another text from the Midrash. Now, this text from Midrash Rabbah is trying to explain the very first word. Let me go back to the opening text, what I'm talking about. This is where the Parsha starts. Remember? The Parsha is called Vayigash, right? Because Vayigash, let me show you here, is the very first word of the Parsha. What does Vayigash mean? Well, if you read the translation that I'm using here, Vayigash means approached. Vayigash. Oh, here, Robin, it's CJR. You said at the moment I am looking back to see where it says he used an interpreter. Oh, okay. Yeah, they didn't understand the language. And then you will see that eventually when Joseph reveals himself, he kicks everybody out. So it looks like there were many people around anyway. Okay. So let's continue explaining the word Vayigash, because we said Judah approached, but the rabbis see a deeper meaning of that. The rabbis see many layers, because no word in the Torah is random. So why would the Torah use the word Vayigash? There are many other things, because it's, I don't know, Vayelech, and he went, or I can't remember, but many other words that would imply that shortening the distance between you and the other person. Or the Torah could just say that Judah said the words without adding any other words, and the rabbi said, oh, interesting that God picked the word Vayigash, because depends where you read it in scripture, the word Vayigash will take slightly different meanings. And that makes it even more interesting, because sometimes we rely on translation. Remember what I mentioned before about having an interpreter, that sometimes there are things missing in translation? This is a perfect example. The word the Torah says Vayigash, and then we read in English, then Judah approached him and said, and then we take that for granted. We take that is the only way to understand the word Vayigash. How do you know? Well, because it's written there. Well, we all know that not because something is written, it has to be 100% accurate. And in these days, I guess we have the concept of fake news or relative interpretations and things like that. So let's go to the Midrash and try to understand different interpretations of the word Vayigash. And then we will try to guess which one of the three applies to this situation. Midrash Rabbah says, said Rabbi Judah, unrelated to the Judah in the Parsha. Okay, this was a different Judah. Said Rabbi Judah, or Rabbi Yehuda, the verb he approached, Vayigash, implies an approach to battle. So Rabbi Yehuda said that the Parsha started with Vayigash because Judah wanted to get closer to the viceroy, maybe to kill him or to fight him. Okay? Why would he say something like that? I said, easy. I learned them from the second book of Samuel, chapter 10, verse 13, that it also uses the word Vayigash, and it says, Vayigash Yoav veha'am asher imo la milchama. So Joab and the people that were there with him approach unto battle. battle. So, in the second book of Samuel, the word Vayigash is used in the context of getting closer to war. Okay? Very interesting. Before I say that, I see something here. Nice comment. Yeah, serious situation. Judah stepped the plate. Serious act anyway. Yeah. Judah got a... Yeah. It was very interesting what he said. What he did, actually. Anyway. So, let's continue with this. Now, Rabbi Nehemiah disagrees with Rabbi Judah. Rabbi Nehemiah says the verb he approached, Vayigash, implies a coming near for conciliation, not for war, all the opposite, for conciliation, as in the verse in Joshua 14:6. You see, now Rabbi Nehemiah said, nope, I learned a different approach from a different verse of scripture. And he's quoting, then Vayigashu, same verb, just this is the past tense. Vayigashu bnei Yehuda el Yehoshua. Then the children of Judah approach Joshua. And this is, if you go and read the verse, Joshua 14:6, is something that they come to talk to Joshua with negotiation. They are actually negotiating the distribution of the land of Israel and where each tribe is going to settle. So it says here that the children, the children of the tribe of Judah approach Joshua, the leader that came after Moses, with their proposal of where they should settle. Okay, so this Rabbi Nehemiah said, so it is clear that the Vayigash means getting closer for a negotiation. So that implies that in this case, let's go back to the Parsha, Judah came closer to the viceroy of Egypt with some kind of proposal. So let's negotiate what happened here with my brother Benjamin. Okay, maybe I can offer that I can stay on his place in jail or something else. He came for negotiation, no mentioning of any kind of battle. No war, no battle, no fights. Fine. But then the sages, it means that there were other rabbis, many other rabbis that had a different opinion. I said the sages said it implies coming near for prayer. Why for prayer? Well, as we learn in a verse in the first book of Kings, chapter 18, verse 36. What does it says there? Vayehi ba'alot hamincha vayigash Eliyahu Hanavi. It says, and it came to pass at the time of the evening offering that Elijah the prophet approached. We all know this. The Mincha is one of the services. It's the afternoon service in these days. So what it says there in the verse in first book of Kings, chapter 18, verse 36, it was a time of Mincha, and then it said Vayigash Eliyahu Hanavi. So Elijah the prophet approached to pray, to present his offerings. So the word Vayigash is presented in the concept of prayer. So 3 different opinions, that's fine. The Talmud is full of that. But then Rabbi Eliezer came and he combined all these views, saying Judah approached Joseph for all 3, saying, if it be war, I approach for war. If it be conciliation, I approach for conciliation and negotiation, right? And if it be for entreaty, I approach for entreat. Wonderful. And this is the beauty of reading Torah. This is the beauty of reading Torah, that then we realize that even though many different words could be used in that verse, God chose the word Vayigash because in the bigger scope, if you take the Bible as a body of the Word of God, then from there we learn that the word Vayigash is not just approached. It's a word that implies 3 different things. Could be approach for war, approach for conciliation, approach for negotiation, or for prayer. It's a beautiful thing. That's why I always recommend, if you can, to try to study the Torah or the Bible, the Tanakh, from the original Hebrew. If you rely only on translations, then you are missing something. Right here, if you rely on translation, you are going to get only one meaning of the word Vayigash, where if you go to the Hebrew, you can get 3 for the price of 1. 3 different interpretations, plus the 4, which is Rabbi Eliezer, and he says it's all of the above. All of the above. Which is a wonderful thing. Any other comments? Any other comments? Because otherwise, I would like to continue with the Midrash Rabbah, that it's continuing now to try to understand what exactly is that Judah wanted to say into Joseph's ears. So far, we try to understand, that there was an important message that he trying to present, because he's trying to convince the viceroy of Egypt to change his mind and blah, blah, blah. That is good. But now, the Midrash is going to one step further. The Midrash is trying to understand what was the message. What is that he wanted to say into his ear? Well, let's go by steps. Step by step, trying to understand what was that message. Next steps, back to Midrash Rabbah. And it's interesting that the Midrash Rabbah brings a verse from the book of Proverbs, mentioning that is connected somehow to this story. How so? Let's see. The verse that they present in Midrash Rabbah is Proverbs 25:11, and it says, Tapuchei za'av b'maskiot kasef, davar davur al afnav, which it says, like apples of gold, b'maskiot kasef is a word appropriately spoken. Did I word that? Spoken. Yeah. So, which is very obscure. What is that? What that does actually mean? What does it mean? Like apples of gold, b'maskiot kasef. That means like apples of gold inside the box made of silver. That's what it is. Okay, try to imagine. This is the verse. The verse of Proverbs is like apples made of gold inside a box made of silver. Doesn't make any sense. What does that metaphor even mean? Let's see. Achilles the convert. Who was Achilles the convert, by the way? Do you know? I'll give you a minute. This is a trivia question. I would like to know if you have a clue who Achilles the convert was. Little clue. We're talking about 1st century, the Common Era. Another clue. He was Roman. Another clue. He had 2 different names. Depends on which Talmud you read. Talmud of Jerusalem calls him Achilles. Talmud of Babylonia called him something else. No clue? Okay, Achilles the convert sometimes is known as Onkelos, who actually wrote the translation of the Torah into some people say Aramaic, some people say into Greek. And yes, he was a convert to Judaism. He was Roman and he was impressed by Judaism, and he converted to Judaism and he used his expertise. Basically, he became some kind of cross-cultural figure that brought all his experience within the Roman world to translate the Torah. And his translation, the Onkelos translation, is it's very interesting because many of the ways he used to translate the Torah also have a way to explain the meaning of the verse. It was a beautiful translation. Some of the books that we have at the synagogue, when we read the weekly parsha, they usually contains the Onkelos translation in a small box at the bottom. So sometimes it's called Aquilas the Convert, sometimes it's called Onkelos. That's who this person was. And now Onkelos or Aquilas is explaining what that verse from Proverbs actually means and how it is connected to our parsha. He says, like apples of gold in silver boxes. Says, as a wheel shows its face from every side, so were Judah's words manifest to every side when he spoke to Joseph. That means his words are multiple meanings. So, again, not so clear why this verse from Proverbs applies to explain the words of Judah. But so far it adds one more piece of information, that it says that he presented his story in a way that it will have many different layers of message. It's almost like a Disney movie. Have you ever seen a Disney movie? Have you ever gone to the movie theater with a little kid to watch a Disney movie? And what many of the Disney movies have in common, and kudos to the writers, is that depends who is the viewer, they will get something different from the movie. Depends where you are in life. If you're a little kid, you will get something from the movie. If you're an adult, you're going to see some things that a kid won't catch, but you will. So basically the movie is the same, but depends who is watching it, will get something different out of it. And that is a talent, to present information in such way. So it said basically one explanation is that Judah carefully picked the words to present the message in a special way. But we still don't understand, even if we accept the words of Aquilas or Onkelos, if we accept his words, how is that anything, what does it have to do with the verse on Proverbs? If you are thinking that question, you are not alone. You are not alone. That's why I want to present to you another text written by Rabbi Shmuel Yaffe Ashkenazi, that he's trying to explain that and to connect the two. He said, when Judah spoke to Joseph, although his words appear to be only words of appeasement, in fact, they have multiple meanings, as per the wheel metaphor. For he had hidden in them hints of reproach. So it's not only that he tried to appease Joseph, but also to reproach it, to rebuke Joseph for what he's doing. You're wrong. You may think that you are the viceroy of Egypt, but you know what? You're wrong. So let's continue. So this is also the meaning of the apples of gold in silver boxes. Something that appears valuable on the outside, right? Like a silver box, can contain items of greater value on the inside. Now we start understanding why Midrash Rabbah connects the two, in the sense that, look, it's like Judah is telling Joseph, if you take the time to analyze what I'm saying, you're going to discover that they are not just empty words. They are words that have lots of meaning, and I may even be able to change your mind if you take the time to actually understand every word that I'm saying to you. Peter, you bring something very interesting here. Peter, you say, Abraham approached Adonai, also Vayigash, to plead for Sodom. And it's actually very interesting because it's also Abraham engaged in a negotiation with God, but it's also a prayer. He was praying to God for the souls of the people living there. The only meaning that is missing from that Vayigash is that it doesn't make any sense that Abraham would approach to God to fight, to battle with God, but nevertheless, it's good. Thank you, Peter, for your contribution. It was awesome. So let's go back to here. It will say our verse statement is thus to be understood. Then Judas pressed Joseph. As a result of Judas pressing incisive argument, Joseph could no longer restrain himself, and he actually had to reveal himself to his brothers. So it looks like whatever, and we don't know yet what was it. We don't know exactly what he told him. But whatever Judah told Joseph broke him. It made him very emotional. Very emotional. But what would it be? What could it be that will make Joseph so emotional? Do you have any clue? Any clue what Judah may have said? Let's play detective here. I love this. Let's play the detective to try to guess the words, because it has to come. I mean, Judah wasn't a Torah scholar. Didn't make any sense. Torah hasn't been revealed yet, right? So you can't say, well, Judah went and gave Joseph a Torah lecture, because that was before Torah. So everything that Judah may have told Joseph, it's something that has to come from his personal experience. So what would it be from Judah's life that it will make such an impact on Joseph? One guess would be, for example, to say, well, maybe he told the story on how he sold his brother. Remember, without knowing that the viceroy was actually his brother. So if that was exactly what Judah told Joseph, without knowing that he was Joseph, that could explain why Joseph became so emotional. That will be one guess. But that was my guess, actually. But then it's interesting that when I started to try to get other opinions from rabbis, what those words implied, and it was something else. The Midrash actually presented different argument. Let's see, another comment here. You said that Judah had feeling for his father, and the impact of Joseph's disappearance had on their dad. Okay, so you also say that the words were somehow related to the selling of Joseph in the past and how that impacted their fathers. Very good. Very good. Now, keep thinking, guys. If you have another opinion, type it in the chat. I want to know. But for now, let's keep reading other opinions from other rabbis, okay? So, Rabbi Israel Taub said, why does the verse include the apparently extra words davar? Aha! You see, I love this from the rabbis. Every word is important. Now, this rabbi, the Moditzer Rebbe, he realized that there is an unnecessary word in this verse. He says, why does the verse include an apparently extra word? Davar, something or thing. The verse could have said, may your servant speak in my Lord's ear. And that will be totally fine. We will understand what's going on. And why did Judah have to speak directly into Joseph's ear? The verse seems to imply that Judah wanted to tell Joseph a secret. Apparently a secret that would calm Joseph's anger. Aha! We are getting into something here, because now this rabbi, playing detective, he found another clue. And the clue is the word davar. And now this rabbi understands davar should be understood as secret. It's something that he didn't want anybody else to know. Maybe he didn't even want his brothers to know what he was about to tell the viceroy of Egypt. He didn't want, for sure, the viceroy's servants, guards of other people to know. what he was about to tell him. Maybe it was too embarrassing. Maybe it was such an embarrassing situation that he wanted to keep it as a secret between Judah and the viceroy of Egypt. And that seems to be the directions that the rabbis are taking in this. So this is the way it goes. Listen to this. This is wonderful. Rabbi Shlomo Katz says, "Please, my Lord, be Adoni, something davar into my Lord's ear. Judah was livid with anger when word reached him that Tamar was pregnant." Remember the story of Tamar? If you don't, check the Bible. It's another soap opera within the Bible. Okay? Judah was livid with anger when word reached him that Tamar was pregnant, and he ordered that she would put to death. But the moment, you see, now he's here, Judah is trying to connect this situation of Tamar and how he misjudged Tamar into the viceroy misjudging Benjamin. You understand this? Go back to the Midrash and how they say there was like a wheel, with different meanings. So this is an allegory. So let's keep reading. It's very ingenious of Judah presenting this to the viceroy. Okay? He ordered that she would put to death. But the moment that Judah was willing to hear Tamar's message, and he recognized the signs that showed that he in fact was the father, his anger immediately subsided. And he declared in Genesis 38:26, "She is more right than I am." This very lesson is what Judah wanted to share with Joseph. He probably didn't want to repeat this in front of his brothers. It was a very embarrassing situation for him. So let's keep this between you and I. I don't want the guys behind me to start. I don't want anybody else to know what happened to me because it's very embarrassing. So let me tell this secret of something that happened to me. Okay? Let me tell you this secret. So this very lesson is what Judah wanted to share with Joseph. This is the word that he wanted to whisper. He approached Joseph, wanted to speak nearby and quietly, directly into his ear. His message is, be Adoni. Literally, be means please, but it also means in or from me. Judah said to Joseph, look at me. Be Adoni. Look at me. At what happened to me. Judah shared his personal story, seeking to create a crack within Joseph's wall of anger, as if to say, if you will learn from my mistake, you will see that there really is another side of this issue. Once you consider that, your anger will disappear. Now, in other words, Judah is almost like he said, look, I know that we can all learn from our mistakes, right? But there is a faster way of learning. Faster way of learning when you learn from somebody else's mistake. And that is a message for all of you. Message for myself too. We can all learn everything if we live long enough. Eventually you're going to make so many mistakes that you're going to learn invaluable lessons. And that's all good, but that's the slow way of learning. The best way of learning is sometimes when we have a mentor or a teacher, that the teacher or the mentor will come to you and will look at what you do or what you say and say, look, I think you are making a mistake. Listen what happened to me, right? I already did what you are trying to do. I already said what you're trying to say, and it didn't end well. So learn from my mistakes, and you will go to whatever you're going even faster. So sometimes learning from our mentors and teachers is a fast track to achieve our goals. Don't wait until you learn from your own mistakes if we can learn from somebody else's mistake. If you ask me, I'd rather learn from your mistakes than my mistakes. I would try to avoid mistakes in my life. So this is what happened here. So let's go back to the text. And of course, the best way for Judah to accomplish this is to share a personal story, not a lecture. Empathy. This is a gem of public speaking as well. And that's why so many successful public speakers, they always add something personal to their lectures. And this is something because one of my part of my job is to help bar mitzvah boys and girls to write their speech. And one thing that I always insist is not only they should talk about the Torah portion that they are reading, but they should always share with the congregation a personal story. Just let your congregation know how your Torah portion applies into your life, what it means to you. And that makes a way better way to communicate a message than just quoting a rabbi saying something. I don't know, just my impression, and that's why I was so impressed by this text, because it resonates with the way I see the world. So, a personal story establishes a rapport, easing the listener into the acceptance process as well. I think it's... Hello, Gloria and Jerry Moscovich. Welcome to the class. Glad to know that you're listening to the lecture. Great. Let's continue. And another comment, and it's the last part of the verse, when Judah said to the viceroy, "For you are like Pharaoh." Why does it mean "for you are like Pharaoh"? What is he trying to imply with that? And this is very interesting, because some rabbis understand that that expression also can help us understand why he wanted to get closer to the viceroy and to, so to speak, speak into his ear. Why is that? Well, let's see. Until this point, Joseph's brother addressed the Egyptian viceroy, Joseph, through an interpreter, as described in last week's Parsha. Judah thought that perhaps the problem that they were experiencing resulted from the translator not translating correctly. And he therefore say, "Hold on a minute. Let's now your servant speak something into my Lord's ear." Judah said, "If I were to say the words, 'for you are like Pharaoh,' right? Your translator could render that in several different ways. He may translate, 'You are as important in my eyes as Pharaoh is.' Or he may translate it as, 'You are as destined to suffer from leprosy because you have taken Benjamin, just as Pharaoh did when he took my ancestor Sarah.' Alternatively, the translator may interpret, 'Just as Pharaoh does not keep his promises, so you do not. For this reason, I must speak to you directly, so that your anger will not flare up at your servant.'" In other words, this is amazing. I said, look, my Egyptian sucks, but nevertheless, I'm going to make the best effort to try to tell you at least this important thing without my translator, just to be sure that you can what I have to say. And that is also great. Sometimes, and I experienced that too. When I came to Canada, I have very little English. I had translators at the beginning helping me. But there was a point that I started to notice that translations are flawed. So even with my broken English, I try to say it myself. Because it's not just what you say, how you say it, your body language. Then you can actually, you're in control of the message. So here, Judah wanted to be in control of the message, even if his Egyptian wasn't perfect. And it's an amazing thing. But why was he so worried of being sure that the viceroy of Egypt will get the right intention when he would say, "You are like Pharaoh"? Why? Which basically in this context means you are like Pharaoh. It's like because you are a powerful person, right? He wanted to be sure. Let's continue here. There is an important lesson here for those who relate and those who hear. Lashon hara. You know what Lashon hara is? Gossip. A small change in inflection or tone can change a phrase's meaning, even if the words themselves have not changed. Thus, even a story whose words are completely true can be told in a way that makes it a lie. So in other words, here the rabbis are implying that Judah wanted to be sure that he was not presenting something as a lashon hara, that's something that will be misinterpreted, and it will have a different connotation. And from here, the rabbis are teaching us how important it is not to be deceptive with our words. I see the Talmud brings it this way. In the Mishnah, they said, just as words can be deceptive in business dealings, so too can they be hurtful in other areas. And so I just wanted to mention this. I think we don't have time today to go more into depth on all the lashon hara. Yeah, Peter, you say sarcasm does that. Yeah, exactly. Sarcasm actually enters or falls into the categories of lashon hara, of gossip, because gossip is just one little bit of the lashon hara. You see, the Rambam, the Maimonides, and we are going to finish with this. Okay, we're going to finish the class with this. The Maimonides, the Rambam, he explains that there are 3 different levels of lashon hara. He will say the first one is a rahil, a person that is a rahil. And so he said, who is a rahil? A talebearer, one who carries gossip, going from person to person and saying, so and so said this. This is what I heard about so and so, even though it is the truth. He's not telling a lie. Nevertheless, because the why he's doing what he's doing, he ruins the world. There is still a worse sin that is included in this prohibition, namely lashon hara. Okay? And this is something, it's not necessarily rahil or rehilut. The next level is lashon hara. And that is one who says bad things about their neighbor, even if they are telling the truth. Okay? But someone who lies is called a motzi shem ra. Now it is not only telling about things about other people, but not they are embellishing or saying things that they are not factual about some other person. That person is not a rahil. That person is motzi shem ra, and it's usually translated as slanderer. So again, there is not the same a talebearer than a slanderer. Talebearer is bad, but it's not as bad as to be a slanderer. And then the next level is a Baal lashon hara, a master of the evil tongue, is one who sits and say, this is what so-and-so did, such were his ancestor, this is what I heard about them, saying bad things about this. Scripture says, may God cut off all flattering lips, the tongue that speaks proud things. So in other words, the Baal lashon hara is somebody who, that's all they do. And we all know such people, right? That it seems that they have nothing else to do. It's not the casual person that it will tell you something about somebody else. That is a motzi shem ra, something that a person that is not really like that. But today this person came and tell you stories about some other person, and the facts might not all be there, but that's not who the person is. And then you make this, okay, you know what you are saying is wrong. Please don't say it again. My ears are not an ashtray for you to dump all that garbage on me. Don't do it again. And it may stay there. But there are other people, and unfortunately, let's say we all know such people, that it looks like that's the only thing they do all day. It looks like they dedicate their lives to share gossip. Well, those people, according to the Rambam, are called Baal lashon hara, a master of evil tongue. And the Torah has very, very bad things to say about such people. And I said that's why Judah wanted to be sure that he was actually avoiding all those kind of confusions. He wanted to present only facts and wanted to speak directly with the viceroy, who ended up being Joseph, his brother. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for participating in today's class. It's always a pleasure to have you here week after week. If you missed part of the class, don't worry. Tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time, this class is going to be rebroadcasted. Okay, the whole thing, it gets recorded and it's going to be rebroadcasted tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time. And so you have another chance to experience this class. Otherwise, if you want to experience live, you have to come back next Thursday. Hello, Murray Nathan. You were there. You're very welcome. Next Thursday at noon Central Time, we're going to get together to study more Torah. In fact, unless that something happens, every Thursday at noon, we have a date to study Torah. We have one question here. Which question it is? And I will give you a chance to ask the question. CJR. Ruin, tell me your question before I hit the end stream button. I'm curious now as to what is the question. I guess you are typing. Let's see. No question? Oh. 40, it says the question is, Joseph asked if my father alive. Yes, that's correct. That's after he reveals himself. I know. We could have, if I could talk about that verse, and that could have been the entire topic of the class. It also has so many layers of why would Joseph open up with that. In fact, I have some slides to talk about it. Is my father alive? It's again, maybe next year we can talk about next year when we go back to the cycle of the Torah, talk about why would Joseph use those words to open up the conversation. It's very interesting. It's a good question. I wish I could have time to answer you. Okay? Thank you everyone for participating. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, and remember, 8 p.m. tonight you can replay the class, or next Thursday, noon Central Time. Here we'll be together studying Torah. Bye everyone.